Hi, I'm wearing Hayes. On Christmas Eve, my parents opened the heavy front door of our Hillsborough home and pushed my single suitcase onto the frozen marble steps. My younger sister, Tara, stood behind them with her arms crossed, smiling like it was a victory. "Let's see how you manage now, big sis," she said. I pulled the suitcase through thick, icy fog. I had no money, no car, and nothing left except the long cashmere coat keeping me warm. I sank onto a snow-dusted bench inside our gated neighborhood, shaking until my teeth hurt. That's when she appeared, an older woman, barefoot, her skin turning purple, silver hair blowing in the wind. She looked like the cold had already taken over. Without hesitating, I stood, removed my only warm coat, and wrapped it around her. She held my frozen hands, looked into my eyes, and whispered, "Kindness like yours is rarer than diamonds." Then she walked into the fog and disappeared. Exactly an hour later, 19 black luxury sedans pulled up silently and blocked the street. That same woman stepped out, now wearing a long camel coat, hair styled neatly, diamonds on her wrist. She walked straight to me, smiled, and said one line, "I've been watching you long enough to know who you truly are." If you've ever been pushed aside by the people who should care for you, comment, "Been there," or share your city so I know I'm not alone. Stay with me. What happens next is unexpected. Earlier that day, I was still reeling from the layoff email that arrived at 10 a.m., another restructuring at the San Francisco ad agency where I had spent 6 years. I put my desk plant in the passenger seat of my 12-year-old Honda Civic and drove south on Highway 101 toward Hillsborough. 32 miles, 47 minutes if traffic cooperated. It didn't. I'd called my mom from the parking garage. "I just need to stay for a couple of weeks while I figure things out," I said. She sounded distracted, reminded me dinner was at 7, and hung up. When I arrived, the house looked like a magazine layout. A 15-foot noble fir in the 2-story foyer, white orchids everywhere, caterers in black ties arranging a table set for 20. Dad, Richard, was opening a 2005 Dom Perignon casually. Mom, Margaret, was fastening a new South Sea pearl necklace I hadn't seen before. Tara, my 27-year-old sister, twirled in a backless red silk dress, showing off a 6-carat radiant cut diamond like this moment had been planned. Derek, my ex of 4 years, stood behind her with his arm around her. I dropped my keys by the door and tried to smile. "Hey everyone, rough day at work," I managed. Tara spun with exaggerated concern. "Oh my God, again," she said loudly enough for the caterers to hear. "Third job in 4 years, right?" She looked at Mom. "Remember when she got fired from that startup for not being a team player?" Mom's lips tightened. Dad didn't look up. My face burned. It was a reduction in force. They cut the entire creative team. Tara waved her ring toward me. "Derek just closed his Series A, 28 million pre-money. Investors love him." Derek gave his familiar half smile, the same one from when he ended things saying, "It's not you, it's timing." Dad finally set down his glass. "Moran, we need to talk." He didn't ask me to sit. He never did when the news was bad. He explained he had amended the family trust last month. All of it, 38 million, was now in Tara's name only. Irrevocable. Signed, notarized, and filed with the estate attorney. He said I was 32, capable, and needed to support myself. Mom added, "We can't keep funding a lifestyle that doesn't produce results, as if my income had ever covered their orchids or Tara's handbags." I stood there trying to absorb that I had been legally removed from the family inheritance while still standing in their foyer. Tara pulled out her phone, already recording. "This is perfect," she laughed. "Big sis comes home broke on Christmas Eve. Say something for my followers." I looked at Dad. "You're serious?" He met my eyes for the first time all night. Cold and final. "You have 20 minutes to pack what you need. Security can let you in tomorrow for the rest if you schedule it." Mom didn't look at me, adjusting a gold ornament instead. I went upstairs on autopilot. My old bedroom still had high school swim photos on the wall. I packed jeans, a couple of sweaters, my laptop, toiletries, and the old Louis Vuitton weekender Tara hadn't taken yet. Everything else, books, yearbooks, my Stanford degree, would stay. When I came downstairs, Tara was live on Instagram, narrating like it was a nature video. "And here's the prodigal daughter with one sad suitcase. Any guesses on how long before she's living in her Civic?" Dad opened the front door. Fog covered the driveway. The temperature had dropped below freezing. I stepped outside. Behind me, Tara called, "Sweet as poison. Merry Christmas, Moran. Try not to freeze." The door closed softly. The alarm armed. That was the moment I went from daughter to outsider in the only home I had ever known. I stood there with one suitcase, wearing the only warm thing I owned, my cashmere coat. Once the door shut, everything went quiet except my heartbeat. I stood in the empty street, trying to breathe while the air stung like blades. Dad's voice echoed in my mind. $38 million gone with one signature, and Mom refusing to meet my eyes. At 32, I had become a stranger to my own family. I started walking because it felt better than standing still. The suitcase wheels echoed through the neighborhood. Every mansion had warm windows and holiday laughter. Each one reminded me that I no longer belonged there. My fingers were numb. I kept thinking Mom might reopen the door, say it was a mistake. But nothing happened. I don't know how long I walked, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour, until I reached the small public garden near the old Episcopal church. One iron bench sat under a working street lamp. I sat, dropped the suitcase handle, and finally cried. I cried for the girl who used to hide under our tall tree waiting for Santa. I cried for every birthday where Tara received more and I was told to be grateful. I cried because I believed working harder would make them value me. But it didn't. I wasn't dismissed because I failed. I was dismissed because I wasn't Tara. Tears froze on my face. I hugged my knees, trying to figure out how to get through the night and beyond. Then I heard slow, dragging footsteps. I looked up and saw an older woman walking toward me. Silver hair loose, shoulders hunched, skin pale under the lamp. She stopped nearby, swaying. Her voice was rough. "Do you know if any shelters still have space tonight? I walked from Burlingame. Everything's full." I wiped my face. "I'm sorry, I don't have anywhere either." She studied me, tired but observant, then sat beside me, leaving space. We sat quietly while her breathing steadied. I noticed her bare feet already turning purple, heading toward dangerous white. Something inside me shifted. She had even less than I did and still spoke with courtesy. I felt embarrassed by my self-pity. I stood, removed the only warm thing I had left, and placed it around her shoulders. She looked surprised, then closed her eyes as the warmth settled. Her hands pulled the coat tighter. She turned to me, tears in her pale blue eyes. "What's your name, child?" "Moran," I said. She repeated it softly, like it meant something. "Thank you, Moran." Then she took my cold hands, squeezed gently, and held my gaze. No words, just recognition between two people who suddenly understood each other. After a long moment, she let go, stood with more strength, and smiled faintly. She walked away, disappearing into the night before I could speak. I sat alone, colder than before, teeth chattering, but something inside me felt lighter, like giving away the last thing I had returned, something I didn't realize I needed. The motel room smelled of cigarettes and cleaner. I'd been staring at job listings for hours when my phone rang from an unknown number. "Miss Moran Hayes," a woman said with a crisp, East Coast tone. "This is Grace O'Neill, on behalf of Mrs. Eleanor Calloway. She would like to meet you immediately." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. "Who is this, really?" The line was quiet for a moment. "Mrs. Calloway will explain everything. A car is waiting outside room 112. I looked through the peephole. 19 identical black BMW 760s filled the lot like a motorcade. The door of the lead car opened. I grabbed my keys and walked out in the same jeans and hoodie I'd worn for 2 days. The woman from the bench was inside, the same face, now polished and composed. Her hair was styled in a low chignon, camel coat fitted, red heels catching the light. She looked elegant and ageless. "Eton," she said kindly, as if we were longtime friends. The door shut softly, the divider rose, and we drove off. 20 minutes later, gates opened to a 1920s Tudor mansion hidden in Atherton behind tall hedges and redwoods. I had driven past this area for years without knowing the street existed. Inside smelled of cedar and roses. A fire burned in a large stone hearth. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a private lake. She invited me to sit on a cream sofa that likely cost more than my car. A butler served tea neither of us touched. "My full name is Eleanor Calloway," she said. "My late husband founded Calloway Commercial Realty. When he passed 12 years ago, I took the company private and redirected profits into the Calloway Family Foundation. We own or finance more than 400 million square feet of office and retail property across the country. The foundation distributes around $120 million each year. I stared, not fully grasping the scale. She leaned in slightly. Every Christmas Eve for the last 25 years, I do one thing the same. I left the estate looking like someone with nothing. No visible security, no wallet, no phone. I walked until I found a person who showed genuine compassion when they thought no one was watching. Most years, I walked all night and returned discouraged. This year, I found you. She explained that after I walked away, her security team, plain clothes, parked 2 blocks away, had monitored me from a distance for 48 hours. They saw me check into a motel with cash, eat vending machine snacks, apply to 50 jobs in one sitting, cry in the shower, and never try to learn who the homeless woman was or publicize the gesture. "You're the first in 15 years, she said quietly. Someone who gave away the only thing keeping them warm without expecting anything in return. I need to know whether that was chance or who you are." She walked to the window, hands clasped behind her. "I have no children, no heirs. When I'm gone, a board of strangers will decide where the money goes. I don't want that. I want someone who knows what it's like to be discarded on Christmas Eve, to help decide how we support the next person in that situation." She turned toward me. "I'm offering you a room here, a salary, and a 5-year apprenticeship. If at the end you are who I believe you are, the foundation will be yours to run, not a gift, an obligation." I opened my mouth, closed it, then finally asked, "Why me?" Her eyes sharpened. "Because I know exactly what it feels like to sit on a freezing bench with nowhere to go and still choose to be decent. My own father did it to me when I was 29. I promised myself that if I ever had the means, I'd make sure no one who chose the right thing stayed lost." She extended her hand. "So, Moran Hayes, will you come home with me?" I moved into the East Wing that Monday. My new room was larger than my parents' entire downstairs, with French doors opening to a rose garden I could smell from bed. Grace O'Neill, tall, silver-haired, direct, handed me a leather binder as thick as a phone directory. "Welcome to boot camp." The first month was intense. 6 a.m. runs around the lake with Eleanor's former Navy SEAL trainer. 7:30 breakfast meetings, where I learned to read a 999 DPF tax return faster than most CPAs. From 9 to 6, I sat beside Eleanor in board meetings at the foundation headquarters on Sand Hill Road, taking notes while billionaires debated impact metrics. Evenings were spent reviewing 2 decades of grant archives until my eyes burned. Eleanor didn't want another wealthy amateur. She wanted someone who could convert funding into meaningful results without wasting a cent. Her favorite saying was, "We don't hand out fish. We don't even hand out fishing lessons. We buy the entire river so everyone can eat long term." She enrolled me in Stanford's executive program for nonprofit leaders, fully funded. 3 nights a week, I drove to campus, sat beside executives twice my age, and learned how to measure outcomes instead of intentions. Weekends meant site visits. Women's shelters in East Oakland, after-school centers in East San Jose, veteran housing projects across the Central Valley. I interviewed mothers who fled abuse with only their children and a bag of clothes. I listened to teens explain how a quiet place to study kept them out of gangs. Every story stayed with me. Back at the estate, Grace drilled governance into me, managing difficult board members, declining political requests without losing funding, dismissing a grantee caught misusing funds without creating a public issue. I redesigned the entire grant application system. Shorter forms, quicker responses, mandatory site visits within 30 days. Eleanor reviewed every draft, marked them up, and made me defend each revision in front of the board. Some nights I fell asleep at the kitchen island on top of spreadsheets. Some mornings I cried in the shower, convinced I wasn't enough. But whenever I wanted to stop, I thought about that freezing bench and kept going. June arrived suddenly and hot. One Thursday, Eleanor texted, "Library. Now." I expected a long planning session. Instead, she stood alone in sunlight from the stained glass windows, holding a single folder. She pushed it across the table without sitting. Inside was an employment agreement printed on heavy stock. Title, President and Chief Executive Officer, Callaway Family Foundation. Reporting directly to the board, meaning her, until she chose otherwise. Base salary, $195,000. 3% equity in the foundation's endowment, valued just under $4 billion. Full authority over all programs beginning year 3, subject only to fiduciary obligations. I looked up, unable to speak. She finally sat, hands folded. I didn't bring you here because you gave away a coat, she said. Anyone can act generous for 5 minutes when they think a camera might be around. I watched you for 5 months. I watched you stand up for a domestic violence shelter every banker wanted to cut because the data wasn't clean. I watched you stay in Oakland until midnight listening to a 17-year-old who couldn't go home. I watched you rewrite a 70-page policy manual because one section would have excluded transgender youth from beds. Her voice wavered once. You have the mind I need and the heart I lost a long time ago. The foundation is yours. I'll stay on the board to keep the old guard manageable, but day to day, the river is yours. I tried to thank her, but nothing came out. She waved it off. Sign it before I change my mind and make you finish the endowment tax module first. I laughed through tears and signed. That night, we opened a 1982 Chateau Margaux on the terrace, just the two of us watching the sun disappear behind the redwoods. She raised her glass. To the girl who had every reason to turn bitter but chose kindness. I clinked mine lightly. And to the woman who refused to let one good act stay unseen. We drank. For the first time since Christmas Eve, I felt exactly where I belonged. October brought the smell of wet leaves and San Francisco money. I was in my corner office on the 22nd floor of 300 California Street, reviewing final figures for the second home campus when Grace knocked. Your sister and Derek Whitaker are downstairs. No appointment. My stomach dropped the way it used to when Tara borrowed my clothes in high school and returned them ruined. I told security to send them up. They entered looking like they'd practiced in the elevator. Tara wore a simple navy dress instead of her usual tight outfits, hair in a low ponytail, minimal jewelry. Derek had replaced his hoodie and sneakers look with a navy suit that almost fit. Both carried the uneasy smiles of people rehearsing apologies. Tara started first, soft voice, glossy eyes. Murianne, I've been terrible. We both have. I'm sorry for everything. Christmas Eve, what I posted, all of it. Derek nodded quickly. We're getting married next spring, trying to do things right this time. I stayed behind my desk, hands together, and listened. Tara took a breath. Dad's in trouble. Some investments failed. He and Mom might lose the house. And Derek's new company, AI for Elderly Care, just needs $2 million to finish the seed round. We wouldn't ask if it weren't serious. I raised a brow. Which part is serious? Dad's mortgage or your valuation? Derek tried to laugh. Look, I get it. You're successful now, but family is family. $2 million is nothing to the foundation. I leaned back. Tell me what happened to the $38 million trust fund you took last December? Tara blinked. We diversified. Crypto, NFTs, a few angel deals Derek's friends were running. It was supposed to grow tenfold. Then FTX collapsed, Luna tanked, and most of it disappeared. Derek added, market downturn. Happens to everyone. Big firms lost billions. Grace slipped a folder onto my desk. Inside were screenshots, bank records, a Forbes article titled Hayes Family Blows Inheritance on Meme Coins. I turned it toward them. 87% gone in 11 months, I said. You bought matching luxury cars, put down a deposit on a Miami condo, and paid influencers to boost tokens. That's not a downturn. That's negligence. Tara's expression shifted. You're really going to sit there and let Mom and Dad lose their house? I pressed the intercom. Security to 22, please. Derek tried again. Come on, Murianne. $2 million is pocket change here. You won't even notice it. 2 guards entered. I stood. This foundation exists for people who never had a safety net, not for people who burned theirs and now want ours. You're not getting anything. Not today, not ever. Tara flushed. You ungrateful. She was pulling out her phone, recording as the guards escorted them out. By the time they reached the lobby, 3 paparazzi vans and a local blogger were outside the glass doors. Someone had alerted them. Tara shifted into full performance. Tears, trembling voice, declaring her sister refused to help her own parents. The video hit TikTok within 20 minutes. Caption, my billionaire sister won't help our parents keep their house. Family first, toxic sibling. It went viral, 10 million views in 6 hours. Then the internet reacted. Old classmates posted yearbook photos of Tara dumping yogurt on my backpack senior year. Someone resurfaced the Christmas Eve Instagram live where she laughed while I carried out my suitcase. A former nanny commented publicly about Tara locking me out in the rain as a joke. Public opinion flipped. Hayes family exposed, trended above the original clip. Derek's pitch deck leaked. Someone at the foundation had forwarded it to a journalist. The startup's product was mostly non-existent, with 10% built in his cousin's garage. Investors backed out. Tara's wedding planner canceled. She had never paid the deposit. Their engagement announcement was overwhelmed with negative comments. I never posted anything. By midnight, the video was age-restricted for bullying, the blogger issued a formal apology, and Tara's following had dropped by half. Grace poured me a small glass of scotch when I returned to Atherton that night. Poetic justice always tastes better when you don't have to do anything, she said. I raised my glass toward the window. No, I said. It feels like closure. November arrived with cold fog that stayed for days. The news broke on a Tuesday. Pacific Crest Capital collapses. $4.2 billion Ponzi scheme uncovered. Dad had put every remaining dollar, mortgage refinance, home equity line, even mom's jewelry, into the fund 6 months earlier because the promised 18% annual return sounded like the solution. The FBI raided the offices in Newport Beach the same week. The founder was already on a yacht somewhere near Cabo. 30 days later, a foreclosure notice was taped to the Hillsborough mansion. No bidders came to the auction. The bank took the property. Richard, Margaret, and Tara moved into a 2-bedroom apartment above a nail salon on Story Road in East San Jose. Rent was $20,900 a month, everything they could manage. After the bankruptcy filing, Tara's credit cards were maxed at $247,000, mostly on shopping and stress purchases. After the October incident, collection agencies called constantly. They came to the foundation without an appointment on a rainy Thursday morning. Security called up, and I told them to let all 3 in. Dad looked 20 years older, hair completely white, shoulders slumped, wearing a sport coat far too large. Mom had trimmed her hair and dyed it a mismatched drugstore brown. Tara wore no makeup, eyes swollen, holding a counterfeit tote like something she needed to cling to. I met them in the small glass conference room on the 22nd floor. No drinks were offered. Grace waited outside the door. Dad spoke first, voice unsteady. Muran, you're my daughter. I know we hurt you. I know we don't deserve help, but we don't have anywhere else. The lease ends in 6 weeks. We'll be out on the street. Mom stared at the table, tearing a tissue. Tara eventually looked up. Please, just enough for us to start over. We'll sign whatever you need. We won't ask again. I opened a slim black folder and placed 3 business cards on the table. First, Marcus Chen, certified financial planner specializing in post-bankruptcy recovery. Second, a free 8-week financial literacy and debt management program sponsored by the foundation at the East San Jose Community Center. Third, the California branch of the National Alliance on Mental Illness Crisis Hotline, and a local therapist offering sliding scale fees. I slid the cards toward them. This is what the Callaway Foundation provides to people who lost everything through circumstances they couldn't control, I said evenly. It's the same support we offer anyone who comes here with nothing. Dad's hand shook as he reached toward the cards, then stopped. That's it? After 32 years, that's all you have for your own father? I stood. You had opportunities. You chose to rewrite the trust. You chose investments that sounded unrealistic. You chose not to speak when Tara treated me poorly for years. Those were your decisions. Mom finally looked at me, tears falling. We were wrong. We're so sorry. I met her eyes for the first time in nearly 2 years. I believe you're sorry now, I said, but apologies don't rebuild anything. Work does. Responsibility does. Tara started crying loudly. You're enjoying this. You want us to hurt. I walked to the door and held it open. No, I just refuse to fund your pain anymore. Security escorted them out. Dad didn't turn back. Mom whispered, I'm sorry, one more time. Tara cried until the elevator reached the lobby. Grace handed me a tissue I hadn't realized I needed. They'll be all right, she said. People who reach the bottom either stay there or start climbing. You gave them the only support we're allowed to offer. I nodded as the rain slid down the glass. For the first time, the tightness in my chest was gone. Not replaced by happiness, just by space. The sky over East Palo Alto was steel gray on opening day. Second home rose like a kept promise, 4 stories of glass and redwood around a courtyard where children were already running between beds of rosemary and kale. 3,000 people filled the plaza. Families who would live there, donors, council members, major news networks, even the governor preparing to cut the ribbon. I stood backstage in a simple black suit, heart pounding. Grace squeezed my hand once. Eleanor, elegant in winter white, nodded at me from the front row. This was the project I had worked on for months: 200 supportive housing units, an on-site medical clinic, job training center, preschool, rooftop farm, and a policy guaranteeing no one would be turned away over missing documents. The mayor finished his remarks. The crowd cheered when my name was called. I stepped to the podium. The microphone felt heavier than any document I had signed. I looked out at the audience. Near the back, partially behind a column, stood Richard, Margaret, and Tara. Dad wore an Old Navy peacoat that hung loosely. Mom held a paper cup of coffee. Tara had cut her hair short and looked noticeably smaller without expensive clothes. I let the silence rest for 3 seconds. 1 year ago tonight, I began, voice steady. I was removed from the only home I had known, with 1 suitcase and nowhere to go. I learned what it feels like when the people meant to support you failed to do so. A murmur went through the crowd. Cameras focused. I also learned something else on that park bench. Real family isn't defined by DNA. Real family is the person who sees you when you feel invisible. It's the hand that reaches out when you have nothing left to return. I gestured toward the building. This is second home. 200 families will no longer sleep in their cars because rent increased. Children will not study in back seats because the electricity was shut off. And everyone who enters will hear the words I needed most that Christmas Eve. You are not disposable. You are not alone. You are home. Applause started slowly, then rose until the entire plaza stood. Phones lit up everywhere. I waited for the noise to peak, then continued, quieter. Tonight, we open these doors for anyone who has ever been told they don't belong, especially by the people who should have cared for them. I looked directly at the 3 figures in the back. Dad trembled. Mom covered her mouth. Tara stared down. Tara stared down. I didn't smile or frown. I held their gaze for a moment longer than comfortable. Then I stepped away from the podium. The governor cut the ribbon. The band started playing. Children ran forward with flowers. Reporters called out, but I moved past them, walking through the crowd as it opened around me. Richard tried to speak. Muran? I kept walking. Mom reached out, but didn't touch me. Tara opened her mouth, closed it, and stayed silent. I passed within 2 feet of them without slowing. The large redwood doors of second home opened automatically. Warm light spilled onto the concrete. I stepped inside. The doors closed softly behind me. I didn't look back, not from anger or pride, but because I finally understood that forgiveness doesn't require reopening the door that caused harm. Sometimes it means walking through a new one and letting the old remain shut. Inside, a young boy in a Spider-Man jacket tugged my sleeve. Are you the one who built this place? He asked. I knelt to his level. I'm one of them, I said. He handed me a dandelion. For you, because you gave us a home. I accepted the flower, and for the first time in a long while, I smiled sincerely. Outside, the celebration continued. Inside second home, the future started.